Looking at the picture, you can see the third event that we're going to look at, which is where Jesus walks on the water. This event is found in the book of Mark, chapter 6, verses 45 through 52, and the book of John, chapter 6, verses 14 through 21. But we're going to use Matthew's account, which is found in the book of Matthew, chapter 14, verses 22 through 31. Let's read it together. Immediately Jesus made his disciples get into the boat and go before him to the other side, while he sent the multitudes away. Now when he had sent the multitudes away, he went up on the mountain by himself to pray. Now when evening came, he was alone there. But the boat was now in the middle of the sea, tossed by the waves, for the wind was contrary. Now in the fourth watch of the night, Jesus went to them, walking on the sea. And when his disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were troubled, saying, "It is a ghost." And they cried out for fear. And immediately Jesus spoke to them, saying, "Be of good cheer. It is I. Do not be afraid." And Peter answered him and said, "Lord, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water." So he said, "Come." And when Peter had come down out of the boat, he walked on water to go to Jesus. But when he saw that the wind was boisterous, he was afraid, and beginning to sink, he cried out, saying, "Lord, save me." And immediately Jesus stretched out his hand and caught him and said to him, "O ye of little faith, why did you doubt?" And when they got into the boat, the wind ceased. And those who were in the boat came and worshipped him, saying, "Truly you are the Son of God." Jesus had just fed the 5,000 people, and John's account says the people were now going to come and force him to be their king. So he tells his disciples to go get in the boat and go to the other side of the sea while he sends the people away. We see in verse 22 that Jesus sends the people away and then goes up on a mountain by himself to talk to his Father in prayer. He persuaded the people to leave and go back home, so he was now up on the mountain by himself. Jesus gained strength in talking to his Father in prayer, and this shows us here that we need to go away at times by ourselves to talk to him through prayer also. The picture shows where the disciples had approximately set out from, but we can see in verse 24 that the storm had pushed them out into the middle of the sea. John's account says the wind had pushed them about 3 to 4 miles out into the sea. This storm would have been similar to the one we read about in the book of Mark, chapter 4, verses 35 through 41. We see in verse 25 that Jesus eventually went to them. Mark's account says that Jesus came to them walking on the sea, but that he would have passed them on by if they had not seen him. The fourth watch of the night was between 3 a.m. and 6 a.m. Jesus' disciples had been battling this storm for several hours now, and they were very tired and possibly thinking they were going to die. So when they saw someone walking on the water, they didn't have the mindset that this might be Jesus. They actually thought it was a ghost, since they knew that a man could not walk on water. But we see that Jesus immediately calls out to them in verse 27 and tells them to be of good cheer. That is, take courage and do not be afraid. It was the fourth watch of the night, so it was still very dark, and they would have recognized Jesus' voice, but they could not clearly see him. So Peter calls out to him and says, "Lord, if it's you, command me to come to you on the water." Matthew's account is the only one that records Peter walking on the water, and when he asked Jesus if it was really him to command him to walk on the water out to him, we see in verse 29 that Jesus says just one word, "Come." So Peter steps out of the boat and begins walking to the Lord. The storm was still raging, so as Peter was walking away from the boat to Jesus, he began to look around and he got very scared. Verse 30 says that Peter began to sink and cried out to Jesus to save him. We can see that Jesus was still watching after Peter as he was walking to him on the water, because someone would not begin to sink on the water if they tried walking on it. They would sink like a rock. But Jesus was letting Peter sink slowly because he knew that he was going to lift him back up on top of the water. We're not told how far Jesus was from the boat when Peter began walking out to him, or how far Peter had to walk on the water. But we see in verse 31 that he got close enough to Jesus that all Jesus had to do was extend his hand to him and pull him up. The storm is still raging as Jesus pulls Peter up to the top of the water, and then Jesus rebukes him for his lack of faith. It should be noted, though, of course, that the other 11 didn't even have enough faith to walk out on the water. We see in verse 32 that when Jesus and Peter got back into the boat, the storm stopped, and there would have been a great calm on the sea, just as it was when Jesus calmed the sea before in Mark chapter 4, 35 through 41. Verses 33 says that Jesus' disciples then came and worshiped him and understood that he truly is the Son of God. We can learn from this event that Jesus is always in control of everything, and even if our faith wavers at times, as we look around all the things going on and around us and in our lives, that Jesus will always be there to take us by the hand and lift us up if we allow him to. Just click on the video that says The Ministry of Jesus on and around the Sea of Galilee, Part 4, to continue.